1 week before my sister's wedding, my phone lit up with a text that didn't break my heart so much as confirm what I'd always known. My father's name flashed on the screen, and below it. After discussing with the Wilsons, we've decided you're not coming to the wedding. Jenny's fiancé's family doesn't want you there. I stared at the message, feeling something inside me snap like a twig underfoot. Not loudly, just a clean break that had been waiting to happen. My coffee sat cooling between my palms, forgotten. The strange part wasn't the rejection. I'd had a lifetime of practice with that. The strange part was how calm I felt, like watching the final puzzle piece click into place after years of staring at an incomplete picture. I set my phone down, took a sip of my now cold coffee, and smiled. Not the tight, polite smile I'd perfected at family dinners, but something feral and free. I opened my laptop, pulled up the folder labeled Jenny's Wedding, and began typing a reply. What a shame. Then I'm canceling everything, including the venue. They had no idea what was coming. After all, how could they know I'd quietly paid for the entire wedding they were taking credit for? Update. A lot of you are asking how I could afford a whole wedding when my parents acted like they were paying. Event planning is my business. I've built it from nothing into something that serves senators and CEOs, though my family still calls it party planning. My mother once introduced me to her friends as our daughter who does parties, right after I coordinated a fundraiser that raised $2.3 million for children's cancer research. Would you have sent that text immediately, or waited to see their reaction first? 6 months earlier, I had secured the Bellamy estate for Jenny's wedding, a historic venue with crystal chandeliers and gardens that turned golden at sunset, the kind of place where wealthy families booked their daughters' weddings before they even met their husbands. It normally had a 2-year wait list, but I'd called in favors, paid the $32,000 deposit from my own account, and locked down a date in prime wedding season. When my mother announced at dinner that they'd pulled strings to secure Jenny's dream venue, I watched my sister squeal and throw her arms around them. I took a long sip of wine, pressing the cold glass against my lips to keep from speaking, the confirmation email burning in my phone like a splinter beneath skin. No one asked how I felt about the venue. No one even looked at me. How did you manage it, Mom? Jenny had asked, her eyes wide with wonder. Oh, your father knows people, my mother replied, patting his arm with that practiced modesty she wore like expensive perfume. We've been saving for this moment since you were born. I didn't correct them. I just nodded and smiled that perfect, practiced smile, the one that doesn't reach your eyes but no one in my family ever noticed. They never asked why I was quiet. They never wondered why I offered to help with the wedding planning. They just handed me lists and expected results, the way they always had. For 6 months, I funneled money from my accounts into their fantasy. The custom invitations with gold leaf that my mother bragged about selecting herself. The Michelin star. Catering my father claimed was a connection through the golf club. The renowned photographer who my parents said gave them a special rate. None of it was true. The truth sat in my bank account, draining steadily as I funded the illusion of their generosity. The only person who knew was Aunt Martha. She caught me meeting with the florist, her eyebrows shooting up when she heard me confirm the payment details. It's you, she said later, cornering me by the bathroom. You're paying for all of this, aren't you? I tried to shrug it off, but Martha had always seen me in a way my parents never had. She squeezed my hand, her eyes sad but knowing. You've always been the backbone of this family, she whispered, even when they're too blind to see it. Martha became my confidant, the only witness to the elaborate charade. Sometimes she'd call just to check on me, to ask if I was sure about what I was doing. I never had a good answer, just a lifetime of habit, being the responsible one, the steady one, the one who fixed everything without being asked or thanked. Growing up, Jenny was the miracle. After 3 miscarriages, my mother had nearly given up hope of having another child. Then came Jenny, with her perfect rosebud lips and golden curls. Every milestone was photographed, every achievement celebrated. First steps, first words, first everything, all documented with meticulous care. Me, I was the sturdy firstborn, expected to achieve but never praised for it. When I won the state debate championship in high school, I called home, breathless with excitement. That's nice, honey, my mother had said, the background noise swallowing her indifference. We're at Jenny's spelling bee right now. She placed 4th. We already had our pictures taken, so we'll see you at home later. I built my event planning business from scratch while Jenny flitted between majors and college. I started with backyard birthday parties, then corporate events, then weddings for local celebrities. Now I coordinate galas that raise millions for charity, manage events for politicians and CEOs, run a team of 27 people. My parents still call it party planning. They introduce me as our older daughter who does events, and Jenny as our rising star at Wilson Insurance, an entry-level job at her fiancé's family company that she'd gotten after dropping out of her third attempt at college. When Jenny got engaged to Will Wilson, son of a prominent local family, my mother called me while I was in the middle of coordinating a charity gala. "Finally, some good news from our girls," she said, as if my recent feature in Business Weekly hadn't happened. As if the house I'd bought myself last year wasn't an achievement. As if I'd been delivering bad news all along simply by existing. Offered to help plan the wedding. "I have connections," I said. "I can get you discounts, priority booking." "Oh no," my mother interrupted, her voice crisp with dismissal. "We want a professional touch for this. The Wilsons are very particular." So, I became that professional just without the credit. I signed contracts under Emma Events, using my middle name instead of my first. I leveraged every contact I had, called in every favor, spent hours on details no one would ever thank me for. Not because I expected gratitude, but because somewhere, buried beneath years of invisibility, I still hoped they might finally see me. And then came the text that broke everything. I didn't snap right away. The message about not coming to the wedding was followed by another. "We'll tell people you had an emergency work situation. Much easier than explaining you." That ellipsis felt like a knife sliding between my ribs, twisting slowly with each passing second. That tiny pause contained everything they'd never said out loud, but had shown me my entire life. It wasn't just that I wasn't wanted at the wedding. It was that I was something to be explained away, a complication, an embarrassment. I could have called. I could have demanded answers. Instead, I turned to my laptop and began the systematic dismantling of the wedding I'd created. First, I contacted the venue. "This is Emma from Bright Events," I said, my voice steady as a surgeon's hand. "I need to cancel the Carter Wilson wedding on the 24th. "May I ask why?" the coordinator asked. "Change of plans," I replied, the words cool and clinical on my tongue. "Please process the refund to the original payment method." Next came the catering, then the photographer, the florist, the band, the rental company. One by one, I unwound each arrangement, each vendor thanking me for my professionalism, each refund making its way back to my accounts like birds returning to their nests. I watched from my laptop as the wedding website automatically updated. Venue unavailable notifications began to appear. The catering status changed to released. The photographer's calendar opened up. It was like watching dominoes fall in slow motion, each one taking down another piece of the elaborate fantasy my parents had constructed. My phone began to ring within hours. My father's name flashed on the screen. I let it go to voicemail. Then my mother called. Then Jenny. I turned the phone face down and continued working, my heart beating steady despite the storm I knew was brewing. By evening, I had voicemails from every member of my immediate family, each one increasingly panicked. I finally listened to my father's message, his voice trembling with a rage I'd rarely heard. "The venue says everything's been canceled and the deposit's refunded. They won't tell us anything except that the contract holder made the changes. What the hell is going on?" I texted back a single line. "How strange that must be for you, Dad, having to explain to Jenny why her wedding is falling apart." For 3 days, I didn't answer any more calls. I went to work. I managed other events. I slept better than I had in months. The weight I'd been carrying, financial and emotional, had lifted, leaving behind a clarity that felt like taking a deep breath after years of shallow breathing. Then, at 9:47 p.m., exactly 3 days before what would have been the wedding date, my doorbell rang. I opened it to find my parents and a tearful Jenny on my doorstep. My father's face was flushed with anger, my mother clutching her pearls like a lifeline, her knuckles white with tension. Jenny's makeup was streaked down her cheeks, her eyes red and swollen. "They said someone named Emma paid for everything," she sobbed, her voice cracking like thin ice. "That's your middle name, isn't it?" I stepped aside to let them in, saying nothing. The silence stretched between us like a tightrope over an abyss. I led them to my home office, where I'd prepared for this moment. I opened my filing cabinet and laid out every receipt, every contract, every bank statement. $87,000 worth of wedding expenses paid from my accounts. My mother's hand flew to her mouth. My father seemed to deflate, sinking into the chair across from my desk like a balloon 3 days after the party. Jenny stood frozen, her eyes moving from the papers to my face and back again. "Why would you do this for me and then ruin it?" she asked, her voice small and confused, like a child who'd been told Santa wasn't real. "I didn't ruin anything," I replied, my voice calm as still water. "I was told I wasn't welcome at an event I paid for, so I declined to fund a party I wasn't invited to." My father leaned forward, his businessman persona taking over. "We can fix this. Just reinstate everything." I shook my head. "Nothing gets reinstated until Jenny hears the truth about why I was uninvited, and everyone, including Will and his family, knows exactly who paid for this wedding." My mother let out a strangled sound, somewhere between a gasp and a sob. "We can't," she whispered. "It would ruin everything." "Tell her," I said. "Or I will." Update. A few people have messaged asking why the Wilsons didn't want me at the wedding, saying I must have done something really bad. You'll see. The truth is, sometimes families exclude you not because of who you are, but because of who they pretend to be. My sister just texted me today saying she's grateful I showed her the truth before she married into that family. Has anyone else discovered they were the family secret? The person who gets edited out of photos and stories? My mother broke first, her voice cracking as she spoke. "We lied to Jenny about affording the wedding," she admitted, words tumbling out like items from an overstuffed closet. "We've been taking credit for everything, but we couldn't have paid for any of it." Jenny looked confused, her forehead creasing. "But why wasn't she invited? Why would you text her that?" My father wouldn't meet my eyes, suddenly fascinated by the edge of my desk. "Will's parents. They Googled you. They found photos from that charity event your company organized last year." "The drag show fundraiser for LGBTQ youth?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. The event had raised over $200,000 for homeless LGBTQ teens, a fact I'd been prouder of than anything else that year. My mother nodded miserably. "They said they were uncomfortable with your choices, that they didn't want someone like you at their son's wedding." "And you agreed," I said. "It wasn't a question. We couldn't risk losing the Wilson family connection," my father said, as if that explained everything, as if it made the betrayal less complete. "Will's family is important in this town." Jenny's face had gone white, like all the blood had drained from it at once. "You uninvited my sister because she helped raise money for charity, and you didn't tell me?" "It wasn't just that," my mother said quickly. Her words rushed. "They found other things too, those articles about you, the interviews where you talk about growing up feeling invisible. They thought you were unstable." "I see," I said quietly. "So rather than defend me, rather than tell the truth, you decided I wasn't worth the trouble." "It wasn't like that," my father insisted. But the lie hung in the air like stale smoke. "We were protecting the family." "I am the family," I said, each word a stone dropped into still water. The words hung in the air between us, rippling outward. Jenny sank into my armchair, her wedding dress sketches spilling from her purse onto the floor like discarded dreams. No one moved to pick them up. "I want to talk to Will," she said finally, her voice stronger than I'd ever heard it. "Jenny, don't!" my mother pleaded, panic rising in her voice. "We can still fix this. We'll figure out the money somehow." "This isn't about the money," Jenny said, her voice hollow. "This is about who we are, who I'm marrying." She turned to me, really looking at me perhaps for the first time. "I'm so sorry," she whispered. "I didn't know." I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. For so long, I'd waited for someone in my family to see me, really see me. I never expected it would be Jenny. She left that night to confront Will. My parents stayed a bit longer, making desperate pitches about family loyalty and forgiveness. I listened silently, then showed them to the door. "The money is back in my accounts," I told them, my hand steady on the doorknob. "What happens next is up to Jenny." The wedding never happened, at least not the way they planned. Will's parents doubled down, told Jenny I was manipulating her, that families sometimes had to make hard choices. When Will refused to stand, up to them, Jenny finally saw what I had seen all along, a family where appearances mattered more than people. She broke up with him a day before what would have been their wedding. Instead of the Bellamy estate with its crystal chandeliers, Jenny got married 6 months later in Aunt Martha's garden. The groom wasn't Will, but David, a kind elementary school teacher she'd met while volunteering. There was no guest list drama, no family politics, just people who genuinely wanted to be there. I was her maid of honor. My parents came, subdued and awkward, but present. They've never explicitly apologized for what happened, but things have shifted. Jenny now works for my event planning company. She started in the mailroom, insisting she wanted no special treatment, and has worked her way up to coordinating smaller events on her own. Our weekly coffee meetings have slowly rebuilt the sisterhood we never truly had growing up. "I used to be jealous of you," she told me recently, stirring her latte absently. "I thought you had it all figured out, that everything came easily to you. I never realized you were carrying all of us." My parents send occasional texts on holidays, which I sometimes answer. Last month, an invitation to my father's retirement party arrived. It sits unopened on my desk, a reminder that respect and inclusion shouldn't be conditional, like a plant, that only gets watered when it's convenient. Sometimes I wonder if I went too far, if canceling everything was too drastic. Then I remember what Aunt Martha said at last year's Thanksgiving at her house. You didn't just save yourself that day. You saved Jenny from a lifetime of living for other people's approval. I had never thought of it that way. I had only known that I couldn't keep disappearing, couldn't keep funding my own erasure. Sometimes the kindest thing you can do for someone is to tear down the beautiful lie they're living in, even if it means you'll be blamed for the rubble. Update. It's been over 2 years since I posted this story, and I'm still getting messages asking how Jenny and I are doing. We're closer than ever. She runs her own division at my company now, and she handled my 35th birthday party last month, the first celebration my family ever threw specifically for me. My mother actually cried during her toast, saying she was proud of me. It felt like closing a circle that had been open my entire life. As for my parents, we're civil. They're learning, slowly. Sometimes standing your ground isn't about punishing. Others, it's about making space for your own worth. Would you have given your family another chance after what they did? The strangest part of all of this is how little I needed in the end. Not the grand gesture, not the perfect apology, not even the money back. All I ever wanted was to be seen, to have my family acknowledge that I existed, that I mattered, that I was worth defending. We all leave footprints in this world. Some are celebrated, documented in photographs and stories passed down through generations. Others are quietly erased, brushed away by those who should have protected them. But even erased footprints leave an impression if you know where to look. I've stopped trying to make my family see me the way I wanted to be seen. Instead, I've learned to see myself clearly, to recognize my own worth without waiting for their validation. And in doing so, I somehow became visible to them in a way I never was before. Last week, Jenny framed a photo of us from when we were kids. Me around 12, skinny and serious, her about 10, all gap-toothed smiles. It was one of the few pictures where we were both looking at the camera, both existing in the same frame. "I found this in Mom's old albums," she said. "Did you know this was the only picture of just the two of us growing up? Everything else was either you alone or me with Mom and Dad." I hadn't known that, but I wasn't surprised. Family photos don't lie, they just tell a different truth than the one we're prepared to hear. My company is thriving. I've opened a second office and hired 3 new coordinators. Next month, I'm planning the governor's daughter's wedding, a career milestone that even my father had to acknowledge when I mentioned it casually at dinner. "You've really built something," he said, the surprise in his voice both gratifying and painful, like finding a dollar in a coat pocket and a hole in the lining at the same time. "I always had," I replied. "You just weren't looking." Aunt Martha moved into my guest house last year after her arthritis made living alone difficult. Sometimes I hear her talking to Jenny on the phone, their laughter drifting through the garden. She's the mother I needed when I was growing up, and now I get to care for her the way she cared for me when no one else did. I still have the text message that started it all, saved in my phone like a scar I can't help but touch sometimes to remind myself it was real. "You're not coming to the wedding." 5 words that finally freed me from the prison of being the family footnote. Sometimes being excluded is the greatest gift someone can give you. It forces you to stop auditioning for a role you were never going to get and start writing a different story altogether. Was I wrong to cancel a wedding I was paying for when I was told I couldn't attend? Or should I have just accepted that some families will always see you as disposable, no matter how much you give? Let me know in the comments, because even years later, I sometimes wonder if I did the right thing or just the necessary one.